Welcome, everyone. I'm Greg Morrow, Program Director of the Conference Board's Employee Healthcare Conference, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, Elective Surgeries, How Self-Insured Schools of California Avoided COVID-19 Sleeping Giant. CEUs, please note that credits are available if you attend the entire webinar. If you're interested in credits, please type your name, email address, and credit type needed in the designated box below. If you wish to earn CPE credit, please also check the 3 pop-up boxes that will appear throughout the program. Some of the critical questions and issues we'll be answering today. Why are employer musculoskeletal claims so high? Solutions across the MSK continuum of care. How will COVID-19 impact MSK spend and workforce pain this year? An employer case study of the self-insured schools of California. Just want to tell you how we're going to handle question and answers. Your mic will be muted throughout the entire webinar. So any questions that you'd like to submit, please send in through the Share Your Questions or Comments Below box on the lower left of your screen. We'll curate the questions and pose them to the speakers at the end of the webinar today. We'll get to as many of them as we can. I'd like to welcome our presenters. Dr. Jeff Krause is Hinge Health's Chief Medical Officer. Jeff graduated from Harvard College, earned his medical degree from UC San Francisco School of Medicine, and completed his residency in physical medicine and rehabilitation at Stanford University. Jeff is currently a clinical assistant professor at Stanford University in the Department of Orthopedics and continues to practice as a part-time staff physician at the VA Palo Alto Healthcare System. Nicole Henry is the Health Benefits Coordinator at Self-Insured Schools of California, where under the oversight of the DEO, she is responsible for the daily operations of Health and Benefits Department that provides service to over 400 school districts and 350,000 members. Nicole received her bachelor's degree in Human Services from the University of Phoenix and is a graduate student at West Texas A&M University, where she is earning an MBA in Healthcare Management. So with that, I'd like to welcome Jeff and Nicole. Jeff, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thanks, Greg. And thanks, everyone, for being here. It's great to be with you today in talking about this subject. So let's dive in. The first thing that we're going to talk about is why employer MSK claims are so high, why musculoskeletal is such a big area. I think Greg has already reviewed the agenda with us today, so I think we're just get into the discussion itself. But the first thing I want to do actually is to do a poll question, and I want to just get a sense from everybody here. Do you know someone with chronic back or joint pain? What's your personal experience with chronic back or joint pain? So let's just take a few minutes to assess the audience here. Looks like responses are still coming in, so we'll give it about another 10 or 15 seconds. And let me do about 5 more seconds. Okay. So the poll is closed. I assume everybody can see these results. And what we're seeing here is something that we typically see when I'm talking to an audience or just any group of people, is that chronic back or joint pain is extremely common. So what we're seeing here is that nearly half of people either both have chronic back or joint pain and have a family or friend with it. And there's only less than 10% who don't know anyone with chronic back or joint pain. Okay, so extremely prevalent in pretty much any population that we're looking at, I think is what the takeaway is from this poll. So that's great. If we can move on from the poll and go back to the slides. To understand this more broadly, we're going to actually start with just a personal story. This is Anne. So she is actually a real employee that's used Hinge Health. And Anne is a 64-year-old accounting clerk at SISC who suffers from chronic knee pain. And there are some common threads with Anne's experience that are really similar to what we see with many, many different people. So first of all, constant pain is the norm. So there's not a day that passes where she's not reminded of her pain in some way, whether it's while she's sleeping or going upstairs or participating in social activities. The pain is a constant there in her life. The second thing is that the status quo isn't working in terms of her treatments. So she's tried sporadic PT sessions, but they're difficult to get to. They might be expensive. She's had doctor visits who prescribed medications or even done injections, but not really fixing the problem, which then gets to the last point, which is that she's starting to think that surgery is inevitable to fix the problem. She's in so much pain, it doesn't seem like anything has really worked, and so that's the only way that she sees that she might be able to get out of her pain. Now, Anne's story is actually very common and represents what we see in a much larger population. So in any given year, probably about 1 in 2 of your members will be affected by some musculoskeletal condition. And what you're seeing here on this graph is a study by Truven Health Analytics of 10 million self-funded employer plan members. And they found that looking at the different categories of healthcare spending, musculoskeletal conditions were the #1 cost driver, accounting for about 1 in 6 healthcare dollars. And we see this over and over again. Even you're probably all familiar with your own particular spending, but our experience has been that even if it's not #1, MSK is always going to be in the top 3, right up there with cancer and cardiovascular. So really a major problem in terms of how it affects people individually, but then really it's a very prevalent problem across the board that translates then into very high costs. Okay, so that's the first part of the discussion today. And I then want to move on and talk more about MSK itself. So what is the continuum of care within MSK, and where should you as employer benefits leaders focus in order to reduce these costs? Okay, so in order to do this, let's jump into another poll here, better than just listening to me talk. It's great to get your input. And here, the question that I want to get to now is which population should benefit leaders really focus on for MSK care? So acute, at risk, or preventative, chronic, or surgery post-surgery. So once again, we'll give this 30 seconds or so. We have a horse race between at risk and chronic right now. Give about 10 more seconds. 5 seconds. Okay, poll closed. All right, so what do we have? So nobody said acute. So I will remember that when we get to the next slide, that nobody really believes that that's the most important thing to focus on. But there's really, it looks like everybody is really deciding between the at-risk population, so sort of prevention, and in the chronic MSK pain population. So I think that everybody is really on the right track here. And let's move on to the next slide, and we'll talk about that in some more detail. Okay, so one of the most common questions that we get from health and benefits leaders is, how do I drive down MSK spending? Because it's obviously really high. And as we just saw in the poll, there was a bunch of different areas where you could focus, ranging from acute to the surgical period. And here, I want to really break out acute versus chronic. And this is something that I think successful health and benefits leaders are really realizing, is that there's a big difference between these two pathways. So let's look at an example. If you look on the left side, let's just take a fictitious character named Robert. Robert twists his knee and then he gets better in just a few days. And that's really typical. About 90% of these acute MSK episodes are going to resolve on their own in 6 weeks or so. And then let's imagine that a little bit later down the road, Robert has another injury. He breaks a bone, and he has to go into the healthcare system. Obviously, he has to be evaluated. He needs imaging. He's going to need treatment. Those aren't really the types of things that are great candidates for a digital MSK intervention. And overall, I think what you'll see here is that acute conditions aren't really a top driver of MSK spend. And I think actually with this audience, you knew that coming in based on your poll results. So then let's look at chronic pain. And here's where Anne comes in again. And with Anne, what we see is that a lot of these chronic conditions are really created and made worse by lifestyle. So there was a long period of time where Anne was experiencing stress. She had inactivity. She had poor sleep. She was somewhat overweight and had extra pounds of pressure that she was putting on her knees. And over time, those costs started to increase. Her chronic pain got worse and ultimately got to the point where I was mentioning before, where she's seriously considering surgery, which is obviously a very expensive intervention, and not to get into it now, but it very often doesn't actually address the problem. A lot of people, just to go back to the poll results, a lot of people also mention the at-risk population. And what I would say there is that I think that that's right on target in terms of trying to address many of the lifestyle issues that seem to end up causing chronic musculoskeletal pain. The problem with trying to address it early on sometimes is that people feel fine, and it's very hard to get them to actually focus on lifestyle changes. When they actually have the chronic pain is where you can see here that most of the costs are starting to be racked up, and also where people seem to really have the motivation to start addressing these problems. So overall, I would say here, in summary, that acute MSK conditions are going to self-resolve, but chronic MSK conditions won't, and they're the ones that really lead to the higher costs. Okay, so let's move on. And the next topic that I want to cover is how COVID-19 is impacting MSK spend and the workforce's pain this year. And following on the same theme as we've done in the last sections, I want to jump to a poll question. This is our last poll. So if you were Anne and your doctor recommended elective knee surgery during this period, when would you schedule your hospital surgery? Would you schedule it this month, a few months, next year, or cancel it altogether? Give it another 10 seconds or so. And all right, let's close the poll. Okay. So let's talk about the results for a sec. Nobody would schedule, or very few people would, about 10% would schedule it this month. So obviously, around 90% of people have some fear about having a surgery at this period. And then most people are saying that they either schedule it in a few months or in the next year. And that, I think that's pretty typical of what we're hearing right now. And then another, very similar to those people that would do it this month, a very similar percentage said that they would cancel it altogether. Okay. So that's really helpful to know, and let's talk about how this is affecting the workforce. So if we go back to the slides, right, what we're seeing right now, and you can see on this graph, is that a lot of people have been reluctant to get elective surgeries, or the provider systems have canceled these surgeries altogether. And there has been a pent-up demand over this COVID period of people that wanted to get surgery but did not. And so what we're in right now is a sort of narrow window where we can address the pain that people have, where most people are not likely to go to surgery for a while. And what we're also doing during this period is trying to address what is likely going to be a major surge in surgeries once the healthcare system opens up after COVID-19. Wall Street analysts are projecting a pretty dramatic increase next year in surgeries, and so this is really the time to intervene as much as possible. On this next slide here, I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that COVID-19 has been introducing, even beyond the challenges with surgeries themselves. So if we talk about Anne, for example, many people like her will tell us that her chronic pain is getting worse and that she has more day-to-day challenges than she typically does. So Anne, for example, is no longer able to go to see a provider. She can't go to physical therapy. She might be inactive because her gym has been closed. She might have a makeshift home office, so her ergonomics might not be so good. And then there's a lot of increased stress and uncertainty that's negatively impacting her mental health during this period. And that probably is leading also to worsened pain. So we know that pain, anxiety, and depression all share similar neural pathways and affect very similar regions in the brain, and that they're very closely tied together. And so as a result of that, what we're seeing is that the intensity and severity of many people's pain, like Anne's, is increasing at an unprecedented rate during this COVID-19 period. So how do we bridge the gap here? There's a lot of additional barriers that have come up during the COVID-19 period. And what we find is that by introducing digital programs like Hinge Health that have behavioral health coaching, we can really intervene today and address people's mental health concerns and their chronic pain right now. So a digital health program has a coach on the front line. And if you pair that with technology and clinicians, it can be a very effective mechanism for people to manage their pain even at home. And I want to just talk about coaching for a second because I think it's a really important point here. So as a doctor, I can focus on sort of what Anne needs to do. I can tell her certain things in a very short office visit. But it's not really my training to sort of tell her how to address many of the behavioral lifestyle issues that she has to deal with to really address her pain. Now, research shows that the best way to do this is actually to combine a clinician with somebody like a digital health, with a health coach who can be with that person on an ongoing basis. So a health coach can help someone like Anne define her goals, help her to find her inner motivation through motivational interviewing techniques, help her with problem solving, serve as an accountability partner. All of that leads to much better adherence to her, to the exercises that she really needs to do to get out of pain, and then much better outcomes. And what we've seen at Hinge is there's been an increased demand for coaching. We've actually increased our clinical team of health coaches and physical therapists by about 20% since COVID started, because what we really find is that the health coaching is the secret sauce that really keeps people motivated and engaged. And what we'll see on this next slide is that we actually have quite a bit of evidence now to support this. So just a few weeks ago, we published probably the largest paper that's been published in the digital MSK world, one of the largest ever in the musculoskeletal world in general. And this was over 10,000 people that were in the program, and so we were able to pick out some really interesting insights. And one, you can see on the left that the more exercise therapy sessions that people do, the more their pain reduced. And specifically what we were able to show is that it's almost about 2 points of pain reduction on a 100-point scale for the first 10 exercise therapy sessions that they do. And beyond that, we were able to show that with coaching, that the first 20 coach interactions each had about a 0.3 point pain reduction, leading to about 6 points of pain reduction that we could attribute to the coaching alone. So it just really goes to show both the importance of people doing their exercise therapies and also the importance of having a coach who's there to support them throughout the process. The other thing that we were able to estimate in this study was that based on the surgery reduction scores that people gave us, what their reported surgery interest was, it was over a $5,000 saving per participant per year as a result of the intervention. So at this point, that's sort of all I wanted to start off with, but I think what we would really like to do is turn it over to Nicole and hear about how SISC has been able to manage their musculoskeletal challenges and how her specific workforce has been impacted by musculoskeletal issues. So Nicole?
Hi, thanks Dr. Krause. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Nicole Henry, and as Greg mentioned, I am the Health Benefits Coordinator for Self-Insured Schools of California, also known as SISC. I'm going to start with a little bit of background on who we are and what our membership looks like. We are a consortium of public school districts in California and the largest public school district in the United States. We were established in 1979, where the local leadership came together and had this idea to self-fund the health benefit plans for the local schools in Kern County here in California. The idea caught on, and before we know it, now we're at 400 school districts with over 350,000 members. So, and at the heart of our program, we're providing coverage to meet the unique needs of school district employees. You know, schools need stability for their annual budgeting, and by pooling resources, we're able to provide them with a more stable long-term solution for their insurance needs. And through the program, we have been able to effectively keep millions of dollars out of the classroom, or excuse me, in the classroom that otherwise would have been paid out in healthcare premiums. So that's really, you know, the heart of our program. And our members, so our membership population skews older with an average age of about 50. That includes a mix of service and office professionals. I mean, obviously we cover teachers, but there's also administration, food service workers, janitors, bus drivers, instructional aides, and even police forces. So we're very, very diverse in that way. And although we provide a great benefit program, we've implemented a number of point solutions that we think make sense. But our number one challenge has been, how do we get members to be aware of these benefits that they have available to them? And not only that, but how to make them aware that they actually need it. It's been quite a challenge. We've bombarded them with information, and we sent them vendor fatigue. You know, we tell them all of this, and how are they supposed to remember what it is that they need at that given time? So, and in addition to this, we are not their employer, so we face that challenge as well because we are a step removed from them. You know, we can't hold mandatory meetings or send out emails to everybody, so we really have some difficulties there with communication directly with our members. And wellness, you know, we're committed to our member health and well-being, both physically and mentally, and we're always looking for programs that will not only help us contain costs, but are meeting those needs as well. We want to make sure that our people are physically and mentally well. And of course, you know, cost containment is crucial when working with schools because these are public dollars that should really stay in the classroom. So we do our best to manage this program in a very cost-efficient way. So when we are looking at implementing new products, we place an emphasis on reviewing vendors focused on high-spend drivers and proven results. And so MSK is our number 2 medical cost driver. It affects all of our members. So again, we've got teachers, and they spend a lot of time standing and sitting, so they've got those issues with back and knee pain. Ground staff like janitors have a variety of back and joint pain due to, you know, repetitive motion and awkward postures. And office workers also struggle, like me, with chronic back and knee pain due to the sedentary nature of our job. So we deal with the gamut, and we felt this is definitely something we needed to address. And before COVID-19, physical therapy, you know, going 1 or 2 times a week for several weeks of treatment, it's near impossible to expect people to do that, especially with teachers. You know, they are expected to be in the classroom. When they're not in the classroom, you have to get substitutes. And that same goes for anybody who's actually on site at a school. So we really struggled with adherence to physical therapy for that reason, because it does require that they go in person 1 to 2 times a week for several weeks. And so we've really seen that as a challenge. But, you know, with COVID-19 hitting since March, I mean, physical therapy in person isn't even an option anymore. So that's why a digital MSK solution really appealed to us. It makes the MSK care more convenient, which is, we believe, is one of the biggest barriers, to access to physical therapy. It's just getting there. It's half the battle. And coaches could engage our population by supporting them, educating them, and keeping them accountable, kind of like Dr. Krause was talking about. You know, when we first implemented the program, I don't think or any of us at the SISC team realized the importance of that coaching component until now that we're actually seeing results, and it's kind of exciting. So when we were looking for MSK solutions, When we were looking for MSK solutions, we were looking for a number of things. We were looking for something that was scalable. We have a large population, and we continue to grow every year, so we wanted to make sure it was something that could be quickly spread to the masses. We also wanted to, again, to be convenient. We wanted to remove that barrier to care of going in person. We wanted something proven. You know, we're looking for something with a proven track record and some form of an ROI guarantee. We also want to avoid PEPM charges, so our motives are aligned with the vendor that we select, and that we are only paying for those people who are actually needing it. And we wanted something engaging. You know, we could give a million different benefit solutions to our membership, but if they're not engaged in it and using it to its full capacity, then it has no worth. So we really needed something that was going to keep our members accountable and engaged in the program to continue to use it. And of course, easy. Our time is very limited, so an easy implementation is a must with any new program that we implement. We want to make sure it's going to go off without a hitch, without having to spend weeks and months dedicated to these. So that's what we're looking for. But as far as outcomes, we prioritize cost savings. Obviously, we want to hear that our members are no longer pursuing surgery, and that was really something important to us. And outcomes, you know, in addition to the cost savings, we want to see the enrollment data, engagement numbers, and metrics on how our program is affecting our members' lives, including both pain reduction and mental health and anxiety. So it was more than just the cost savings. We really wanted to see the kind of quality of life improvements that we see. And so to address these needs, we decided to offer Hinge Health to our program, or to add Hinge Health to our benefit program. Hinge Health is a coach-led digital program for chronic back and joint pain. And the program provides enrolled members with sensor-guided exercise therapy, one-on-one health coaching, and interactive education. So on the next slide, we'll show a video of the Hinge Health program. We can get that video up.
Here's Steve. He's taking part in the Hinge Health program.
Here's Steve. He's taking part in the
program for back pain and is using his motion sensors to guide him.
Hinge Health program for back pain and is using his motion
through some therapeutic exercises. In its first exercise,
sensors to guide him through some therapeutic exercise. Holds the position for the suggested amount of time. The wearable sensors guide members with real-time feedback so they're confident at each.
Okay, well, I think we get the gist of the presentation. You can see that the gentleman in the video, he's wearing these wearable sensors, and he's got a tablet that's kind of leading him through his motions to make sure that he's hitting the proper angles. That's what I saw there. And so, with that said, I want to take you through some of our engagement outcomes so you can kind of see the impact it's had for us after the first 12 weeks. So, first, our members, so the first one here is educational articles. So our members read an average of 23 educational articles throughout the program. And, you know, I joke that I don't think I've read 23 educational articles in the last decade. So, you know, of course I'm kidding, but this number is very, very impressive that our members are that engaged in their healthcare and willing to read educational articles. And these are articles that are very relevant to their own health. Exercise therapy, 45 sessions. So that's, again, during the 12-week intensive phase of the program, that's an average of 3.75 visits per week with Hinge. It's hard to imagine that kind of adherence with in-person PT. I honestly just don't think it would happen with in-person PT because, again, there's barriers of actually getting there. And this is why the digital solution had this appeal to us, is really this. And the coaching, again, like Dr. Cross is emphasizing, and I totally agree, but this coaching component has been really something that we didn't really realize the true value in it and how it really is the heart of the program. Over the 12-week internship days, our participants interacted with coaches more than 5 times per week. And again, I joke about it. I don't talk to my mother 5 times per week. But the fact that these members are talking with their health coach and that they're that engaged was a really impressive number to us. We really liked that Hinge had an individually assigned coach so that we could build rapport with the members. And we also find it really interesting that, like I was saying earlier, we're a step removed from employees. We really deal with communication issues because we can't talk to them directly. These coaches are talking directly to our membership, and it's pretty huge because they're talking to them at a point in time when they're thinking about their health. And so, for instance, the coach is kind of aware of the member's day-to-day circumstances. Like the coach is aware if they're ill and they could use a telemedicine vendor, or if they're dealing with a complex diagnosis elsewhere and could use maybe our expert medical opinion program. And the coaches have actually gone a step further and have become educated on the other programs we offer. So when our members are working with them, they have access to that information, can share it with the member and refer them out where it need be. And that has been one of the huge benefits we've seen with Hinge that we didn't really anticipate to be so huge when we first implemented. You know, we were really focused on the MSK, and this is something different that's come from it. And it sparks new ideas of how we can use coaching in the future, because that's really how to get to members. So, and not only that, we also believe these coaches are really holding people accountable. You know, it's easy, if they didn't have the coaching component, we felt like, yeah, they would use it a few times, but you know, who knows if they continue, if they're engaged enough to forget or just get lazy about it. But the coaches are really engaging the members and making sure that they stick with it. That's the feedback I've heard directly from our membership. So that's, I want to share some more outcomes. So at this, we saw each of our participating members had a pain reduction, reported a 54% pain reduction. And to put that into context, in clinical trials of opioids, the average pain reduction was only 15%. So to think that ours was over 3.5 times that without the use of opioids is pretty huge, in addition to the other reasons why we wouldn't want somebody to take opioids if not necessary. In addition to that, we found that pain reduction to be very significant, since MSK pain often translates to surgery. You know, people are in pain, and they're told that here's a solution to end your pain, and that's frequently the path that's taken. So we really found that this pain reduction is pretty impressive. And so I want to share just a member testimonial I get, and I know many of you who work in benefits, you know, we don't often hear from members telling us how great their benefits are and how happy they are. We often hear from members because they are upset about something. Something didn't go right, the claim didn't get paid, they're upset. So to get positive feedback from quite a few members directly at our level has been pretty significant to us. Because I would say on average, I get an email from a member maybe once a month, twice a month. And again, that is very bizarre for me to get positive feedback on one of our programs like that directly from our membership, because again, you know, at the level we're at. So a few weeks ago, I received an email from one of our members who works in the transportation department at one of our schools. He's a bus driver, and he said that he got a postcard in the mail, and his wife was considering having back surgery, but she was having a fear of complications. She was kind of anxious about it, and the timing was right. She got the postcard about Hinge. She took the program. I guess her pain decreased dramatically, and she has increased strength and flexibility, and now that surgery she was going to have is off the table. And then the bus driver, because he was the one who contacted us, said, now I know it was so successful for my wife, I tried it out for my shoulders, because that's a common thing we see with our bus drivers. And he said that he's having the exact same results, and he's had a huge reduction in his pain, and flexibility in his shoulders has increased, and he's able to do his job, and he's there more. And we were, I mean, getting an email like that made it all worth it, like all the work that we put into providing these solutions. It really, you know, we talk to vendors, and we make sure it's right, and we ask them any questions, and we want to see reporting, and all of that work, and to hear back from our membership that it's really having a positive impact on their life, and genuinely, and they're reaching out to us to share. That is pretty telling and pretty huge. You know, it's one of those things that kind of makes all the work we put into these solutions worth it. Because not only are they avoiding unnecessary surgery, which translates to dollars, public dollars for our program, it also translates to better quality of life. Their day-to-day lives are happier, which leads to better health. So we're pretty excited about that. Go on here to the next slide. So when our members are reporting their pain decreases, we also want to see that there's less likelihood of surgery. And so as you can see, the likelihood of surgery is reduced by 56%. That translates to an ROI of 3.8. So not only are they avoiding the unnecessary surgeries, but they're becoming more engaged with their health, with the support of a health coach. And 1 in 2 surgeries are avoided. That's really, really significant in terms of dollars. And again, and that also leads to less people probably on opioids. So avoiding that unnecessary surgery means more than just dollars. It improves quality of life, maybe avoidance of an opioid prescription and that kind of thing. So really, really pleased to see these results. And then again, you remember that Anne that Dr. Krause was talking about. She's a 64-year-old accounting clerk. She's actually a SISC member, and her pain is now a 2 out of 10 compared to when she started. She was a 6 out of 10. And she shared this quote with us, which I really like. It's very simple, but I think it translates across the board. I assumed that a knee replacement was inevitable. I was even ready to schedule it, except I couldn't afford to take that much time off. I am so happy to realize that I can avoid it or at least postpone it for a long time. And again, very simple quote, but I think it's very telling because it feels like that is very common, that we hear this from members all the time. You know, they're in pain, they think surgery is the solution, and they don't even realize that there are alternatives out there. So, you know, if Anne in this case had the vacation time available, she would have probably had the surgery. But thankfully, you know, we were able to provide this Hinge Health benefit to her, so she was able to realize that there are alternatives out there. And I think that's our goal here, is to find those people who just assume that this is what they have to do, and let them know they have alternatives and they can be more educated on their health care and engaged. I think it's going to help the whole person, not just their MSK issue. And so our mental health can. So, you know, it's pretty obvious, I think, that research shows a strong connection between depression and chronic pain. You know, if you're in pain, obviously, I don't know how mentally well you can be because you're in chronic pain all the time. It can turn into depression. I've heard them referred to as like cousins. That they're completely intertwined. So the gray bars here represent the percentage of participants at the initial screening that met criteria for either anxiety or depression. And then at 12 weeks, there was a 94% reduction in the number of participants with anxiety and a 91% reduction for the number of participants. And I've been told that these are the highest rates of mental health improvements that Hinge Health has seen. And the numbers speak for themselves there. It's pretty impressive. And I think it's telling it's probably to our population and the stressors that they deal with, you know, school employees and all of them, not just the teachers. There's a lot of stress that goes into that, and it affects everybody. The quality of the education affects everybody in the community. So the fact that we were able to, you know, maybe I'm being a little high in the sky here, but the fact that we were able to make that kind of impression upon how they view their own anxiety and depression is really, really huge. These are our children's teachers, these are the bus drivers, these are the instructional aides, the janitors, the people that are around our kids more than we are. So the fact that we brought that to them is really, really meaningful to us, and it kind of goes back to the heart of what we do. We're here to support our schools. Okay, so let me kind of to that end, productivity outcomes that actually relate. So not only when people are feeling better physically and mentally, they are more engaged and productive. And this is, again, we're not the employer, so it's not like we see it as like dollars out of productivity, but we see it more as these people need to be in the classroom. They need to be supporting our children and providing education. You know, more that they can be mentally well and fit to be in the classroom. I think the better off we all are. So 31% increase in productivity. To me, that directly translates to an improvement in the classroom and the children that are getting care. And I'm kind of pie in the sky about helping the schools, but it's really what drives us to for our membership as well. And so with that, I think I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Krause.
That about wraps up our planned presentation, and so we'll move on to Q&A soon. I just want to give a quick summary of what we heard today. So first, we talked about the difference between, just the prevalence of MSK. We talked about acute versus chronic and the real need to emphasize on chronic MSK conditions, which this audience, I think, realized coming in. And then we also talked a lot about COVID-19 and how that is affecting MSK pain and mental health. So more than happy now to take questions, either for me or for Nicole. Also, if anybody is interested in talking with somebody right away about your organization in particular, feel free to text hi to this number here, 669-244-4675, and you can set up time to meet with a Hinge Health team member right away. Right. Greg, are you going to moderate the questions?
Yes, sir. We have a bunch of them. Let's start with one for Nicole. What communication approach did you find most successful, including continued engagement and utilization of the program?
In terms of getting the initial engagement, the postcards were by far the most effective. We at SISC, we don't actually have direct email access, so we really stuck with postcards and social media ads and contacting. So we're, again, a consortium of schools. So we provided toolkits to each district so that they could communicate with their employees. But among all those, I would definitely say that the postcards were, I thought, dramatically drove the enrollment. We didn't expect to get the number of members enrolled that we did, quite honestly, from the past. And I have to give credit to Hinge's marketing team. The postcards that they put together and the ads that they put together worked better. And I say this because we worked with a number of vendors, and not to put anyone else's marketing down, but it was top notch. It really was. It was the right amount of words, the right words, and they were strategic about it. So, you know, they would send out some postcards and try different methods, and we found out which worked best, and we try another one, and then send more of that out. So it's been a process. But to answer all that to say, the postcards were definitely most successful in terms of getting engagement.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Question for Jeff. Do at-risk individuals experience more acute conditions?
Well, that's a tough one. That's a good question. I've never heard that people who are at risk necessarily have more acute conditions if that was dealing with sort of accidents or traumas. I could imagine that people who might be overweight or less in shape or who are just generally less healthy might have more twisted knees or pull more muscles or something like that. So it's a good question, but I've never seen any strong data that showed that that acute injuries are more prevalent in that population.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question for Jeff. Do we see that the coaching component leans on behavioral health for participants across the board?
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into the coaching, and there's a lot of behavioral health elements there. So there's a lot of things, elements from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that are incorporated into our program that coaches use. And so that might be, some of those things would be, say, catastrophizing, where people assume that their symptoms are never going to go away or that they're going to get worse. Just sort of generally making things out to be worse than what they might actually be. Coping strategies, pacing strategies, so those are very common. We actually used to have specific modules that we, for behavioral health, that we only offered to people who screened positive for depression and anxiety, but because these behavioral health concerns are so common in this population of people that have chronic pain, we actually started delivering those lessons to all of our users. And so those messages are delivered by the coaches, and there's also a lot of individual work that each coach will do, so depending on what that particular user's needs are. And then we also have a whole education component of the program, and so many of the behavioral health messages emphasizing the importance of movement, emphasizing that people are safe to move, those kinds of things are delivered all throughout the program. And they're delivered consistently over time because so many people, you can hear a message and then it goes in one ear and out the other. So we need to make sure that people are constantly getting these messages that are so important to their recovery.
Thanks, Jeff. Question for Nicole. What were the most important considerations for you to implement?
First of all, finding an MSK solution was the first thing we were looking for. But when we decided to implement, it was the pricing was really important to us. I think I mentioned in the presentation that we are averse from PEPM models. We really wanted to pay when people use them. And also a return on investment. And not only that, we spend a lot of time talking with these vendors and understanding their culture and making sure that they align with ours. And we really, really want to make sure, and again, I said it before, but that our motives are aligned. We've, again, worked with many vendors, and we found that that is really crucial regardless of any product that's out there. We want to make sure that we're going to have the same end outcome. So again, I would kind of say that arrangement with the pricing and what that looks like and the culture that and relationships that we build with that vendor right away.
Thanks, Nicole. Follow-up question to that. How did you make sure employees stayed engaged?
Members to stay engaged? We found we found the coaches by far, again, that's something we didn't anticipate. But the coaches, and I hear this from members frequently, that they, sometimes they're like, man, my coach they just really at me to make sure I keep up, but I'm glad they're doing it. So the coaches definitely keep people accountable. I think that's the key to it all, really. Yeah.
Thanks, Nicole. Question for Jeff. Hinge Health appears to be an osteoarthritis pre-surgery solution. Are there any plans to deploy a post-surgery PT solution?
Well, I'd say a couple things there. So first, I would say in the classification as osteoarthritis, I think that's one of the conditions that we might treat. But and you know, osteoarthritis is extremely common as it's just wear and tear as people age. But we do a lot more than what might be diagnosed as osteoarthritis. And then by pre-surgery solution, I guess certainly the point is to try to avoid surgery altogether, and so that's where so much of the benefit comes with addressing the chronic issues. That being said, so first off, many people who do Hinge have had surgery in the past. So usually we make sure that people are at least 3 to 6 months out from their surgery before doing Hinge. We are considering supporting people in the immediate post-surgical period. That, though, is not really the focus in terms of cutting costs. You know, once they've already had the surgery, typically then there's a surgeon who wants them to follow a particular protocol, and so you know, that's not something where that's not a place where we started. That being said, it is definitely something that we're considering. Just better supporting the peri-surgical period, both before surgery and after surgery. So I do think it's a very valid question and an important area for us, you know, to potentially move into in the future.
Thanks, Jeff. How many languages does Hinge Health support?
So currently it's English, and we are starting to add Spanish support. So we've been hiring Spanish-speaking coaches, physical therapists, and then working on translating the program itself into Spanish. So right now it's English primarily, and we do have some support for Spanish speakers, but that will be improving in the coming months. And then we'll have to see what the demand is for other languages after that.
Thanks, Jeff. Another question. In your experience, is there a generational component to people being open to non-surgical options?
So I thought the question was going to be a generational component to the digital health types of solutions, but for surgeries, you know, that's a tough one because I've seen it with patients. I still practice, you know, as you mentioned, at the VA. And I see it pretty often with people across the board of different ages saying that they're not interested in surgery. Certainly young people, in my experience, don't want to have surgery. And then many older people will also say that, you know, they've had experience with it, that they've heard about bad experiences. You know, I think it also depends on the particular surgery. Some surgeries are far better than others. I will say that in terms of the generational experience using a digital program like Hinge Health, we've actually been quite surprised that the older population tends to do even better in terms of their adherence to the program than the younger population. So you know, I don't know that we can make any sort of blanket statements about generational divides in terms of their interest in surgery and in terms of their interest in using a digital health program to avoid it.
Got it. Thanks, Jeff. Question for Nicole. How many members of SISC participated to drive the results?
To date, we have 2,912 members that are using the program, and we launched in October of 2019, so we haven't even been live for a year yet, but we're about 3,000 members.
Got it. Thank you, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Question for Jeff. Can you talk about what Hinge Health sends out to program participants? Do members need a smartphone to participate in the program?
So there's, once somebody signs up for Hinge Health, what they'll get in the mail is a package, about yay big with a tablet in it and sensors. And those sensors get strapped on above and below the joint, and then they connect through Bluetooth automatically to the tablet. So there's very little setup that needs to be done. It works right out of the box. So people do not have to have a smartphone. We've been very aware of the fact that there are people of different technological capabilities, people with different financial means who use the Hinge program, and we wanted to make sure that everybody has a device in which they can run the program. That being said, we have recently launched a smartphone app, so if somebody does want to use their smartphone with Hinge, they can do that. People don't need to have Wi-Fi access to be using the program. There are a couple times where, especially at the beginning once, where you want to be able to download the latest app and the latest information from the app, but then it gets stored locally. And when there is an internet connection, it's going to sync with our servers, but that's not required on an ongoing basis.
Thanks, Jeff. Is Hinge Health global?
As of now, we're just serving clients in the United States, but certainly something that we consider in the future. There's obviously lots of healthcare regulations and privacy issues that would impact that.
All right, Jeff. That brings us close to the end. Any further comments you'd like to make, or Nicole, before we close things out?
I think we covered it all here. And one thing I wanted to mention is we talked about our membership numbers at SISC in the beginning of 350,000. And I should clarify, now that I'm thinking about when we were talking about results, is that not everybody is eligible for the Hinge program, because we have some people on Kaiser plans and each of those where they wouldn't be eligible. So it was only about 240,000 that are eligible for that. Put that into context.
Thanks, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all. If you'd like to hear more from Hinge Health, they'll be presenting Reducing Musculoskeletal Spend, Where to Start and Why with Fujifilm and AutoZone on June 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern at our annual Employee Healthcare Conference, which runs virtually June 24th through July 2nd. As our thanks for joining today, please use the code KN1 for a $300 discount when registering for that conference. You can find that event at conference-board.org/healthcare. If you enjoyed today's webcast, click the links in the downloadable presentation to register for the following upcoming programs, or you can visit conference-board.org/webcast for a full listing. In addition, our Human Capital Insights podcast series is a great resource for talent executives wishing to address challenges and stay informed about current issues across the entire spectrum of human capital. You can register for those at conference-board.org/podcast. A big thanks to Jeff and Hinge Health for the continuing support, and Nicole and Self-Insured Schools of California for sharing your time and the company's work with us today. And thanks everyone for attending. We really appreciate your time, and we hope to see you again soon. With that, I hope everybody has a great day.